Shikamaru's realization that he was needed in certain areas and that he could fulfill is a lot of times what motivated him. He had so many people around him willing to help him and trying to push him to the next level, trying to push him to be the best version of himself. My little personal theory about Shikamaru is that he was never actually that lazy. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, and over here we discuss life topics by analyzing characters from popular TV and film. So you read the title. Today we are talking about Shikamaru and Nara from the Naruto series, and our topic is overcoming laziness and finding motivation. So let's begin. I really love Shikamaru's character. I didn't at first. It took time for him to actually grow on me as a character, but the more we get to see past that kind of blank facade that he puts up, that blank unconcerned facade he puts up nearing the beginning of the show, the more we see who he really is and just a much more likable character he becomes. Early on in the show, we see that Shikamaru is lacking in motivation, and that's a bit of an understatement. Anything and everything that he's asked to do is a drag. He would prefer not to get involved. He doesn't seem to like anything in particular or anyone in particular. He's annoyed by most people, and the only person we see him genuinely really getting along with is Choji. And it seems to be because Choji doesn't really require anything out of Shikamaru, and that's in his comfort zone. He seems to find everyone else at the very least annoying. He finds Ino annoying, his mother and father annoying. He thinks Asuma pushes him a little too hard, although he likes all these people enough, but he would rather not have them talking to him. And outside of Shikamaru's immediate circles, that being his fellow teammates, his sensei, and his parents, people don't really think too much of Shikamaru. He's glossed over for some of the more vibrant, involved, and intense characters that we've been presented with up until that point. Sasuke, Naruto, a lot of the other characters who've kind of just shown their personalities a little bit more. And his strength is often underestimated. If we think about the Chunin exams, when he is in his battle with Temari, Kurenai and Asuma are having a conversation in the stands, and Kurenai, being a sensei that is familiar with some of these students, she is not expecting much of Shikamaru, and she tells Asuma this, and Asuma is kind of just like, well, wait, you'll see. I think he has something up his sleeve. And she can't even believe this, as many people are not familiar with Shikamaru's strengths. The reason that the people in this inner circle see more in Shikamaru and push him is because they have seen glimpses of Shikamaru's genius. If we think about Asuma, his sensei, he became aware of Shikamaru's skills as a tactician through playing shogi with him. But this idea about Shikamaru that many people outside of his circle share about him, the fact that he's underestimated and perceived to be maybe a little lazier and less interesting than some of the other characters, is exactly how Shikamaru wants it. He wants it this way because with lower expectations, he has to do less, which is exactly what he wants. But as the series progresses, we see Shikamaru go from this uninvolved character to this crucial member of the Leaf. He is relied on heavily by a number of people within the Leaf to provide expertise in terms of strategy, wisdom, battle know-how, planning, all of these things. He goes from a character that was completely overlooked at some point to being one of the most reliable characters in the show. It's funny because even in the fandom, for many of the lists that I've seen, like
compose your ultimate Naruto team, like which ninja would you choose?
Shikamaru is often included in this list because of his excellent strategical skills, his analytical skills, and his battle know-how. So how does he move from one extreme seemingly to the complete other within this series? That's what we're going to look at today. And I'm going to give you guys, like I normally do, 3 tips, 3 tricks to overcome that same laziness and uninvolved spirit that Shikamaru had earlier on, and how to develop your own sense of motivation. So number 1 is to get familiar with your skill set, find out what is needed and where you're needed. The fact is, Shikamaru is not physically very strong. He's not one of the heavy hitters in terms of straight up combat. And he was in a class being the Konoha 11, with a bunch of heavy hitters. Naruto, Sasuke, and a number of other characters were just head-on fighters that relied heavily on their brute strength to get things done. And so I'm sure to some extent, Shikamaru maybe felt a little out of place amongst some of his other classmates who had more flashy, hard-hitting jutsu. But when it came time to figure out a plan, when it came time to analyze the enemies that they were fighting against, when it came time to sit down and make a plan and to anticipate the moves of the enemies, all of these things that encompass a tactician's role, Shikamaru became the go-to person for those things. And Shikamaru's realization that he was needed in certain areas and that he could fulfill is a lot of times what motivated him. If we recall the episode where Shikamaru, Naruto, Sakura, and Pakun were chasing after Gaara after the Chunin exams, and they were trying to catch up to Sasuke to give him aid against Gaara, they were being chased by a number of sound ninja, and Shikamaru came up with a plan. He said that one of them would need to go back, distract the sound ninja so that the other ones can get away and go ahead and help Sasuke. And they all kind of looked around for that person who was going to stay back. And eventually Shikamaru comes to the conclusion that it can only be him. He is the only one with a skill set that will be able to stall the group long enough for the rest to get away. And this is what motivates him to take responsibility. I think it's called a shirker's call to action or something like that. And a lot of times that can be true for us as well. Until we know that we're needed, until we know that our specific skill set is what's required, is what's going to be the most effective in any given situation, a lot of times we are not thinking about acting. When you find out that we need you for the job, when you find out that someone specifically requested you, someone specifically needs what you can offer and bring to the table, it is a motivator. So it's important to know what your skills even are to begin with and where you can fit in and best display who you are and what you have to offer. During the Sasuke retrieval arc, when Tsunade put Shikamaru, the only Chunin at this time from the group, in charge of the platoon to go get Sasuke, she made a really good decision in doing this. By putting Shikamaru in charge and knowing that he would be able to properly guide and make calls when it came to how to actually get Sasuke back, she put a sense of responsibility in him, and she gave him a position in which he will be able to display his particular brand of expertise. This was in part what motivated him to keep going, because he knew, quote, just like from the other episode, he was the only one that could do it. And that knowledge made it possible for him to keep moving forward, even though, as he said, he didn't particularly care for Sasuke, and he probably didn't necessarily want to go on this mission, but knowing how much he was needed spurred him on. So number 2 is to push yourself out of the nest. Shikamaru was lucky enough to have several people around him at any given time, encouraging him and trying to bring out the best aspects of him. He had a loving and caring mom and dad, which is rare in the Naruto series to have, both parents around for very long. He had 2 parents who were involved in his life, were always constantly pushing him to do better, to think higher of himself and other people. He had Shikaku encouraging him to use his particular set of skills, his tactician skills, just like he does, and trying to tell him to respect women. He had his mother, who he perceived as very naggy, although we didn't know too much about her. She was nagging him, and she's his mom. I'm sure she was trying to push him to do better. He had Ino, who he had a similar issue with, the naggy part, but Ino loved both of her teammates, both Choji and Shikamaru, and she tried to push them to be the best that they could be. He had Asuma, who was an encouraging and patient sensei who tried to bring out the best in him. He had Choji, a loyal friend, also pushing him and encouraging him to be the best. If we think about even the Chunin exams, the fact that he was the only one that actually became a Chunin in that particular arc, the spectators saw something in him that they didn't see in the other children and moved him on to the next level. He had Tsunade, who relied on him heavily for his leadership. He had so many people around him willing to help him and trying to push him to the next level, trying to push him to be the best version of himself. But this is not the case for everyone. Not everyone has a network of people surrounding them that want to see them reach their full potential. In fact, a lot of people have the opposite of that. They would rather keep you down than to see you do well. So whatever case you're in, it's best to go ahead and push yourself outside of the nest. Even though Shikamaru had all of these people around him supporting him, what one might argue really spurred him on was the realization of loss and the call to action he felt as a result of that. After Asuma's death, he of course wanted revenge, but as time progressed, we saw him begin to look at things a different way. Once Asuma told him that he needed to protect the king, which was the future generations of the Leaf, he took that to heart. And that is sort of what pushed him out of this proverbial nest that he was in. The loss of Asuma put things into perspective in his mind. He realized that he was the next generation that was coming up, that was going to be the Asuma to another group of people. He was going to be the example to the upcoming generation. If we think about during the war, the loss of his father, the way that he immediately took up the helm after the death of his father. Not that he hadn't been doing things up until that point, he definitely had, but that spurred him on even further. And so what we can glean from that is sometimes we have to mentally make that jump without the encouragement of other people and other life situations. What is it that makes you comfortable and stagnant? For some of us, it's the reliance on our parents. For some of us, it's the reliance on a significant other, of our friends, of our networks, these people around us that we know will be there to catch us if we should fall. But what if you didn't have that? Do you have a plan? Do you know what you would do? Who would you be without the presence of these supportive people? If the answer to that is you would not be as good of a person, that you wouldn't reach your full potential, then it's time to start finding that inner motivation. And the time to do that is while the people that are supporting you are still there. You can practice during that time. I would encourage you to run simulations in your mind. If this person wasn't here, if this relationship wasn't here, if this resource wasn't here, and this thing happened to them, what would I do? And then go out and do those things. That's an easy way to make a game plan. I know sometimes we have trouble like making a plan, like what exactly am I supposed to be doing well? What would you be doing if things weren't going well? If you couldn't go and ask your parents for money, how would you make money? Even if your parents are still there to offer you money, know that and start moving towards that. If you say,
well, I would probably try to start looking at different streams of income.
Do it now, even while you have them as a resource. If your significant other wasn't there to give you support and love, what would you do?
Well, I develop a sense of self-love.
Okay, well, do it now while they still love you. And this is how you push yourself outside of the nest without having to have some tragic situation happen for you, to finally open your eyes and realize that it's important to do for yourself. And number 3 is to be clear and honest with yourself about your desires and your intentions. My little personal theory about Shikamaru is that he was never actually that lazy. I think it was a number of things that spurred him into that kind of I don't want to get involved attitude that he had towards life. I don't think he was always like that. Even though they showed him as a kid like that, I think this was a result of a number of things. One, I think the lack of tragedy kind of formed him into a person that just didn't really see the need for urgency in some of the ways that other characters did, such as Sasuke and Naruto. One of the reasons they have all of that energy, whatever is positive or negative energy, is because so many things have happened to them. Like they have vendettas, you know, they have agendas, they have things that they want to get done because things happened to them at such a young age. Shikamaru didn't really have that. Also, he had a dad who was heavily involved within the inner workings of the Leaf, and he had a mom that stayed on him about certain things. And he himself just wasn't the most powerful person, but he was put into a class with a group of highly motivated people. He was surrounded by very strong personalities all the time. And I think that can sometimes cause a person to retreat into themselves and feel like come up with something to cope with all of that energy that's around them. And I think Shikamaru's laziness was a coping mechanism to deal with the high energy and all the high-strung people around him. I think it was a coping mechanism to sit back until he found out that he was needed and that he could be of use and that he could be of service. And then that spurred him on to jump into the action. But without that, he coped by saying he didn't care, which I think he really did. I just think he knew his place and he didn't want to say that he knew his place. So in being clear and honest with yourself, you can determine what your goals are, what your desires are in an honest way where you're not chasing something that you don't need to be chasing, or you're not hiding or trying to cover up something that is really you, which is draining within itself, can discourage you from acting in a way that is your true self. When you know what you want, you can set clear goals. You can go after those goals with a new self-created energy that doesn't require the support of a bunch of people. It's coming from within because those desires are clear and concise, and they're coming from within. So all of these things are working together to give you the energy to pursue what it is that you really want. So don't lie to yourself about who you are and what you want just to cope with the people around you, or try to fit in and not stand out, or show people your weaknesses and you don't want people to know this, so I guess I'll act like I don't care. No, be yourself and you will find exactly where it is that you best fit. Okay, so those are my 3 tips. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and to do all of the things. And I want you guys to answer this question down below in the comments. What are some of the tricks you use to motivate yourself when you are feeling down? Let us know in the comments below if you like, and I will see you guys in the next video.